Hi, I'm Kacey.
And I'm Gianni.
I never finished reading the Animorphs books as a kid, and I still haven't as an adult.
And I've never read them.
We can't tell you where we live.
But we can tell you that we want to revisit these books as adults and dive into what we would keep or change if we were to put it on TV.
Two friends, 50-something books. Welcome to Morphin Buddies.
And then the music kicks in, and then people are just so ready.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Morphin Buddies with me, your host, Miss Kacey Cisnowski, and across the screen, right in front of me, Mr. Gianni DeMaya.
Yo.
What's up?
Happy to be here.
Just
Best
chilling.
podcast around, some would say.
Mm-hmm.
Some would say.
Best mid podcast around.
Best mid. Top
Yeah.
of the mid.
Top. we're at the top of the mid list.
Yeah, which you could take as the mid list or the pyramid, whatever feels better or more appropriate for you.
Yeah, I like that. How are you doing in this hot summer weather?
I'm miserable. This is my least favorite time of the year, personally.
Same.
I recognize that
Same.
other people really like summer, and
They love it.
I think that those people should be shot. No disrespect. But I think that those people are crazy people.
Yeah, psychopaths.
If you really
All of
like
you.
the sun, I get it. Spring is far superior to summer. This is so hot. It's humid, miserable.
Yep.
I mean, it may not
Sweaty.
be. I don't know where you audience person are listening to this from, but like maybe it's not humid for you. We live in
Lucky.
New York. It's humid. It's disgusting.
Gross.
I walk outside. I'm immediately sweating. My dog,
Yes.
miserable.
Yep.
She hates the heat too. And I also think that she hates it because I hate it. So we just double down on each other's energy. We're walking around for like 2 seconds. We're like, does this suck? She looks at me and tells me in her dog voice, yes, this sucks. And I say, how did you get human sentience? But then we ignore that and we go back inside. And it's just awful.
Yep. And then the sentience is gone. Then it's just dog and human.
Yeah, go
Only
figure.
comes out in the summer.
Yeah,
Really interesting.
Super odd how that works. Winter's my favorite season because I like the
Oh
cold.
my god, me too! I
Right?
cannot tell you how many people I tell this to, and they're like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, screw you. Hot chocolate, warm blankets, curled up on a couch, watching a movie, snuggling up next to your loved ones. Christmas? Hello?
Come on.
Hanukkah?
Literally all of your
Kwanzaa?
favorite stuff happens like late in the year. Like,
Yeah.
it also though, like, you can get warmer in the cold. Like, you can
Yes.
wear more things, and
Yes.
that's fine. You can't. There's only so much you can take off in the heat, and
Before it's illegal.
Yeah, and I look as someone who likes to dress a little bit slutty. Even I am like, whoa, I got to pump the brakes on this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't always be. I mean, I got hairy shoulders. I got a hairy back. I can't be just like rocking that out everywhere. Like, I can go to a very specific, like, gay bar and still be accepted
Or
there.
Brighton
But
Beach.
that's about it. Yeah, like that's about it though. I can't
Yeah,
just be
I get
wandering
that.
around. It's a Gilligan's Island. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just
I get that.
fend for yourself kind of situation out here. It's just
I can see you
brutal.
taking the bottom hem of your shirt and tucking it into the collar of your shirt so you have a crop top. And you're so cute in your summer boy top.
Yeah. with my little bow.
With your little bow. Your
Yeah,
sassy
and no
little
pants.
dog walk.
And
Nope.
no pants.
No pants. Illegal. Pants are not allowed in this weather.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I'm a little under the weather, so I don't know if anybody can tell in my voice, or I may cough in this episode. I hope not. I've got the flu, or I'm recovering from the flu.
Boo.
I was in bed. Yeah, boo. The last 2 days.
The
I don't know
flu.
what happened with COVID. Suddenly the flu was like, oh, COVID's bad? Let me come back. And started being way worse than what it used to be. I have my vaccines, I have my boosters, I got everything done in December, so I guess I need to redo it. But like, it knocked me off my butt. I'm a fairly healthy 35-year-old lady who exercises regularly and eats pretty healthy for the most part. And
That's how I describe myself as well. The
a
exact same words
35-year-old
that you
lady.
just used. Yeah. Fairly healthy 35-year-old lady. That's
There you
me
go.
as well.
I like that. Those are your vibes. You'd be right.
Yeah.
I can see your little
I
garden.
don't have the flu. I think you sound great, by the way. I don't
Thank
have
you.
the flu, but I'm always just like one vape puff away from getting it. So I mean, like,
You got liquid in the
so
lungs.
I hear you. Yes, I hear you. You know, you got to be careful out there. Everybody stay healthy.
Yeah, please, everybody be careful, stay healthy, do what you got to do to keep yourself safe. Anyway, well, we're back to Morphin Buddies now. We're on the 8th book, The Alien. So right off the back, this was not the book that I thought it was going to be. That book comes 2 books later.
Oh.
So
okay.
I'll talk a little more about that at the end. Well, I guess I'll talk about it now since we're here. There's gonna be an introduction of a new alien, and that's all I'm gonna say. 2 books from now. I'm not gonna give you anything more than that. It's not gonna be a regular character. It's just kind of a thing that shows up and is a really interesting, good story. That's what I thought this book was gonna be. It wasn't, but this was still. I think this is really close to one of my favorite books. I think.
Yeah, so I'm coming right out of finishing it, like literally like mere moments ago.
Yes.
Rolled credits.
How did you feel?
So to speak. So I haven't exactly processed these thoughts a lot yet, so I'm going to think out loud for a moment.
Go ahead.
Right? So my number one thought is like, this is definitely the most like lore intensive or like lore expanding book in the series thus far. It has a lot of very interesting little tidbits. A lot of that just comes inherently from the perspective because we're following Axe really in his own book for the first time ever. We got a taste of him in Megamorphs, but this is really his show. And with that, I think that Applegate and Michael Grant, who wrote the book, did some pretty interesting things in basically having Axe have a secret and have that be like sort of the driving force of a lot of the plot in this book. And I actually quite liked that little mystery as well, just in the way it was sort of staged, because it still did that thing where obviously I think most audiences probably feel this, where it does become a bit tiresome to know someone is withholding information, but just to simply not know what it is. I do think that like the least interesting mystery that you can present to an audience is having a character know something that we don't know. I think that the most interesting thing is having the character not know and the audience not know. But there's successful versions of that all throughout, right? There's successful versions of both of the audience knowing and the character not knowing. I think that's successful as well. So you could still do it this way. What I liked about this was that it seemed to constantly sort of acknowledge that like this was weighing an emotional toll. Like it wasn't exactly, it wasn't just a secret for secret's sake. It was Axe being very candid with his sort of POV in how he was trying to navigate, basically being honorable to his people with this, keep withholding this information, and then at the same time trying to be honorable to his new people as he's trying to navigate assisting the Animorphs through Earth. But there was other interesting tidbits as well. I mean, we found out a lot about Axe's home world, home life beyond this sort of overarching kind of mystery at the center. Even something as simple as like the hierarchy of princes, like why he always refers to Jake as Prince Jake, was better expanded here. There was even a prologue that briefly sort of addressed Axe's relationship with his brother and what that looked like. There was just a lot of really, really interesting, very lore expansive exposition, but in a fun and unique way that really tied it to character. And I very much enjoyed that. If the book has a knock, it's that it's kind of, I don't want to say like inert, I don't want to say it's not moving at all, but it's very much a plot that is just intrinsically tied to like this is a kind of character episode. This is an episode that's just really focusing on one guy. I mean, there's some very consequential stuff that happens towards the end, but ultimately this is an isolated story. This is just kind of something that, this is like Breaking Bad, The Fly, for all intents and purposes. This is something that if you're not someone who's really interested in Axe as a character, I don't know if this book really offers much more for you outside of just like the lore dump that it's giving. So I would say that it's another one of those books like that first Tobias book where if you really liked just kind of exploring the world through this character's POV, then this is going to totally work for you. Yeah. But how'd you feel about it?
There was a lot of humor in this book, like unintentional humor. It's just who Axe is, and we already kind of had an idea of that. But the way that they expand on this, I think, made it doubly funny. Just the way that Axe sees the world, how he makes sense of the way that things work, really worked in the book's favor, in my opinion. I do think, it's a very big character type book rather than a plot book. I feel like the plot kind of unravels as the book goes along. Not like unravels like falls apart, but like there are more steps to the plot the further you get into this character story. And part of those plot things happening are character motivated from Axe. Those are decisions that he decides to make based on what he wants to do for himself, the goals that he wants to accomplish. And I really wanted to keep knowing more about the Andalite world. I thought it was really interesting to kind of, even some vocabulary they dropped on us, which was fun. I thought that was really interesting. And I liked this first book on Axe. I think it was great. I didn't love the ending. We can kind of get to that. I kind of thought of different ways to kind of change it and maybe improve it a little bit better to make a little bit more sense to the character rather than just like, what? He's right there,
Yeah,
like,
I felt that.
he's asking for it. We'll get to it when we get to that point in discussing the book. But I think that was really the only low point I had in this book. Otherwise, I really liked the character study. I liked the humor. And there's a lot of turmoil in our boy Axe. Axe and Tobias are both just the saddest of boys, and we love them. And I'm glad that they now feel like they have kind of a kinship to each other. And I like that. Yeah. That's how I felt.
Yeah. It was successful, I think. You totally know what you're talking about with the ending. I felt the exact same way.
Oh, great.
I have a really big swing idea for how I would change it, but
Cool.
I'll save that for later. But
it
would be the type of change that I think people would be like, I don't know, that's a little crazy.
Maybe we can have our 10 listeners vote on what they think is best. They can just email us
I don't know.
And see what they
I like that. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
fun.
I appreciate those types of big swings in an adaptation. So I'm also, and I've said this every time, what we talk about, like the changes we would make if we were adapting it into a TV show or whatever. But I only know the books up until the point that we're talking about them here. So, some of these ideas, maybe don't work in the totality of everything considered. So, obviously take that
for what it's
in
worth.
mind. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. But overall successful book, I think. Very much enjoyed Axe's perspective.
Where would you rate it on the scale? Because I think Predator is your number one, right?
Yeah. So let me pull up my ranking right now. So I have at the lowest right now. I have The Visitor, which is book 2. Then The Invasion, which is book 1. Then The Andalite's Gift, which is Megamorphs 1. Then The Encounter, which is book 3. The Capture, which is book 6. The Message, which is book 4. And then at number 2, it's The Stranger, which is book 7. And then The Predator, which is book 5. I would say this is somewhere This is above the capture for me. I'm trying to decide if it's above the message, though. I did really enjoy the message. I would say this is below the message. So I would say this is like my new number 4. What would
I think
you
that's
put it?
fair. I think, well, I haven't been keeping a list, but I think this is definitely either 1 or 2 for me. I think it goes down to 2 just because of the ending kind of fumbles it. Whereas I think The Predator, the beginning wasn't that great, but it was easily forgettable. You could just cut that entire bit out. But the ending to this one, you can't really just cut it out because it is a big deal. It's
like
kind
the
of
most
a big
important
deal.
thing that happens.
And it was really frustrating for me. And so that kind of tanked the book a little bit for me. But I think the beginning was a strong start. I liked a lot of the struggle. And so I think because of that, I think I'll put it on my number 2 slut.
I'm really excited to talk about this ending moment with you because I think there's a lot to unpack with it. But
yeah, I agree. So I guess we'll get into it. Gianni, you want to start us off with the alien?
Sure. So the alien starts actually with a prologue first. It starts with from Axe's perspective, his just kind of like experience in being on the ship that took essentially his brother's life, this sort of crash landing, the moments before the sort of crash landing. And this was, I think it was an interesting opening. It's so funny that this happens now because we had talked about
doing
the
something like
adaptation,
this already.
doing exactly what this is, right? And I still think our place for it in
Fits a little better.
one of those earlier books, probably at the beginning of the message episode, would have probably been more appropriate. But either way, I mean, it was still an interesting perspective. There is something about this that I'm a little bit torn about, and I'm curious your opinion on it because basically, so like the relationship that they kind of craft here in this very brief little opener is very, very similar to like the relationship of like little brother, big brother.
Yeah.
That like maybe like Jake would have with his brother Thom. And
bring it back to Thom.
And I'm torn about it because on the one hand I'm like yeah, I think it's important to see like these Andalites in their natural environment have like a very sort of casual natural relationship. And on the other hand, I did feel a little bit like that's not the Axe that I know. Like it's just not like, and I get it. He's a fish out of water now. He's more comfortable here, whatever. But he still seemed like he was like just wide-eyed and like opportunistic and like really happy to be here. Yeah, like joking around, and I'm like, that's not the Axe that I know. Like he doesn't really get like a lot of this like humor, like social cues or whatever. Like he's very buttoned up. He's almost like he's like kind of a Data character archetype
he's
from
very
like a Star
dry.
Trek or something. Yeah, it's super dry. Yeah, that's where you derive a lot of that humor. And so this did feel like a very different Axe to me in a way that was maybe disingenuous. But all in all told, I don't totally mind it. I think it's like still a necessary opening in the overarching scheme of it. But it was just something that I definitely noticed. But
I would kind of expand on that a little bit. I think I kind of agree. I did notice he was making some jokes in the beginning or trying to make like his brother laugh or something, and I was like, it doesn't feel quite right just based on what we know for his character. The only way that I feel like I could explain it away is like maybe it seems like there's a decent age difference between him and his brother. Seems like Andalites live a very long time, much longer than humans normally do in their course of life. So it seems like when Axe was born, Elfangor was already a young adult or close to being an adult. And so I feel like maybe because Axe doesn't know his brother that well, maybe he's trying to like bring humor in to try to get him to like laugh or bond with him in some way, but he's not very good at it. So I feel like that could be something that his character could do, or like a change that they could make just to kind of explain some humor. But yeah, I did feel it was like a little weird, a little bit off. But I didn't hate it. I also
Yeah.
I didn't hate it.
Yeah, it's just one of those that's like, okay, but it's brief enough that you're not forced to really buy into
Yeah.
much, so it's kind of like able to pass it really
I
pretty
wonder
easily.
I wonder if they're trying to mirror the relationship between Jake and Tom with Axe
That
and
seemed to
Elf.
be what it was for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I kind of got out of it.
So and I feel like they do a decent amount of that in this book. I feel like they do a lot of mirroring with relationships and things in this book. But yeah. So yeah, those were my thoughts.
So, we jump ahead, obviously, after everything kind of goes to shit. Just from Axe's perspective, his brother had kind of cautioned him to, like, basically stay in, like, this sort of safe area for all intents and purposes, and then he watches in horror as everything kind of crashes around him. And then we jump ahead to, like, the sort of present moment, or obviously all of the books are them talking about it in retrospect, but the present moment for all intents and purposes for where we're reading at now. And it's a lot of I don't know exactly what order we get into it. I think we go right into the movie, if I recall correctly. So I'll refrain from doing, like, the whole ritual stuff. He goes. They've decided to go to a movie together because Axe is curious about, like, humans.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, we could all go to, like, a movie. You can, experience things that way or whatever. Obviously chaos ensues because and it's very interesting too, seeing this from Axe's perspective. This is easily the funniest part of the novel because Axe we had, like, a sort of idea that, like, when Axe is in human form and can taste things, he doesn't really have a whole lot of self-control. It's actually far worse than we thought.
Oh my God.
He has zero self-control. He becomes, like, an absolute maniac and literally starts, like, crawling on all fours, like, just to try to steal other people's, like, popcorn and candies. He calls them what is he, globules?
Yeah, globules.
It is very, very funny. Totally weird. Completely out of pocket.
Yeah.
But like, that's sort of how we're kind of thrown into the circumstances. So they try to rein him in. They take him outside, and almost immediately they see someone sort of, like, writhing in pain on the street.
Yeah.
They're like, that's really strange. A bunch of people crowding around. This person is shouting about yerks. So everybody sort of watches in horror, and the immediate thought or consensus from the group is, oh my God, like, it's working. We defeated that Kandrona, and it's finally paying off because they're starving and they're dying in these people's heads. Cops come very swiftly. The cops, like, kind of collect a yerk with, like, some sort of, like, glass vial tube thing. Or I take that back, because I don't know if it was implied that they collected a yerk or if they just put it in the back of their head.
I think it was implied that they put it in the back of the head, because it's telling it from Axe's point of view, and Axe is like, if your eyes weren't looking for it, you'd miss it, but they took out a little silver tube and they put it in the back of this person's head.
Right.
Which, us as the reader, were like, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And
Axe is very, in his description of it, he's like, I hear how optimistic they sound. I don't want to tell them the truth of what's happening to, like, let them down. So you're like, ooh, I'm intrigued now. So then the next day, the plan is for Axe to actually pose as Jake's cousin Phil. I think it was
Philip.
Phil, right? Philip from out of town. And
hi, I'm Philip. I am from
basically
out of state.
and basically try to, like, get some more, learn more about humans. He, before that, has his first, like, sort of ritual. So he does this ritualistic sort of prayer. He dips his hoof in the water, reaches to the sky, like, prays
Kneels
all
down,
these different sort of elements. Or this kind of has this, like, sort of religious aspect or component to it. Axe doesn't necessarily feel very compelled or connected to this sort of religion from his description, but he does still, like, honor this ritual.
So as far as I know, it's not necessarily a religion, but it's because he was training to be a warrior with the Andalite people. It's like morning rounds, essentially. Like when you're in the army and you go through basic training, this is one of the rituals that all the to-be warriors have to, like, learn. and they get chastised if they do it too fast or too slow, or if their arms aren't out straight enough or whatever. So I do know that is one of those things that he's trying to keep, just to keep some semblance of his Andalite life. And he's feeling very separated from it, obviously, because he's away from his planet and all that. And when I was like reading this, I kind of feel like maybe the Andalite Society, I could be totally wrong, but I feel like Andalite Society is kind of run like, has a samurai ethic to it. Like there's a lot of rituals, there's a lot of rules, there's a lot of honor, there's respect, and those are paramount to anything else. You always follow the rules no matter what. And you have to do it exactly this way, or you are dishonoring your entire family. So
yeah, I don't think that's off base at all. To make that.
Yeah,
assumption.
so I that's kind of how I imagine the Andalite culture. So they all have these very sacred rituals that they do, and this is one of them if you want to become a warrior. So. Yeah, so that's what he's doing. And then he gets interrupted by a rattlesnake. What's up? Hiss.
Yes, yeah. He ends up deciding to take the morph of the rattlesnake because he doesn't know. Maybe it'll come in handy or something. Spoiler, it does.
Also, here's a note. This annoyed me in the book. It always annoys me when people say snakes are poisonous. Snakes are not poisonous. They are venomous. There's a difference. So poisonous, to educate those who don't know the difference. Hey, what's up? Educational Corner is back in session. Poison, when something is poisonous, you have to ingest it, and it affects you internally, and then it makes you very sick. Venom has to be injected into your bloodstream. You can't like eat venom or it'll like burn your skin like immediately or something. You know, like I don't know exactly contact with venom, but I know venom has to be injected. So when people say snakes are poisonous, I'm like, okay, have you eaten that snake and gotten sick? No? Okay, so it's venomous. It's venomous. I know that's like an annoying neurotic thing that I have, but I'm like, yes, there is a difference.
No, I didn't know any of that, so I think you're teaching us all something.
Well, there you go. Consider yourself educated.
Yeah, I'm so educated right now. Yes, the poisonous snake.
No, go Gianni.
The venomous snake is now taken by Axe, and so then he lets it go. So he and Tobias are having like a brief conversation. Tobias's characterization in this book, I did also feel like was a little more quirky than his usual self.
Yeah, I think he's embracing. I think he's embracing being a hawk boy, and now he's kind of able to make jokes a little bit easier than what he did before. Yeah. Because
there was a couple of times where I was like, wait, did I read that right? Like, because that sounds like a Marco line, and it was a Tobias line, and it happened a couple of times where I was like, oh, that's weird.
So I think part of that is Tobias feels comfortable and a kinship with Axe, them both being apart from the worlds that they originally were in. And I think he's feeling a little more comfortable in like teasing Axe a little bit or making some jokes. And because Axe is so dry, he's like, okay, you know, like he just kind of accepts it. And he's like, okay, all right. And they feel that, you know, I think he feels more comfortable with Axe than, I mean, he loves his friends, but I think there's a different kind of connection that he has with Axe that he feels. That allows him to be more like that.
Yes. It was just something I noticed. Not something that I thought was like a bad thing necessarily, but yeah, he calls him Axe Man, and he's got all that. I was like, are you Marco right now? This is weird. But so he goes to school and almost immediately sits down in class, and lo and behold, Jake's teacher starts spasming as well and starts yelling at a Yurk to get out of his head. Almost immediately, Jake tries to spring into action. Axe is like, I don't know what to do. And then the vice principal, who we know is a controller, steps in and orders everybody out. And Jake looks like he's about to do something, decides not to, and then leaves as well. And shortly after this...
But he does see the tube. Jake does see the silver tube that they used to kill the teacher.
Yeah, so then... Axe kind of unveils a little bit more. It's like sort of begrudgingly, but kind of unveils that he's like, yeah, well, I mean, basically they're not going to let any of these
controllers
Yeerks and controllers.
Yeah,
they're gonna eradicate them pretty much, because they need to remain hidden.
Yeah, and Jake
so
kind
it's
of
damage control now.
Yeah, Jake kind of freaks out a little bit. He's like, "You mean because we destroyed the Kendrana that now all these people that have Yeerks starving in their heads, they're just going to be killed?" And Axe is like, "Yeah." And then Axe says, "Love the warrior, hate the war." And I'm like, "Shut up, Axe. That's not a real line. You did not actually say that." But yeah, Jake kind of has a moment, and then they're all kind of freaking out. Like, "Did you know this? Why didn't you tell us?" And he's like, I didn't feel like I could tell you. Like, would you still have done it? We made a big hit, but this is a war. There's going to be sacrifices, unfortunately.
Yeah, and obviously Jake is feeling a little, I think, sensitive because Thom is a controller, and Thom could theoretically be exposed. And Axe actually brings up that directly and says, like, would you have risked your brother's life if I had told you? Would you have destroyed the Kendrana if I had told you? And Jake's like, you don't know a thing about us at all. And hey, shut up, Jake. All right, so like I'll say it. I know everybody was waiting for it. It's like 30 minutes into the podcast. Wow, he hasn't said a single bad thing about Jake. Hey, shut up, dweeb. It's okay to
Honestly,
admit.
I was thinking that.
Like, it's okay to admit that, like, yeah, like he kind of cooked with that because he kind of made a good point. Like, of course, it would have brought some sort of skepticism to the plan if you had known. You wouldn't want to expose all of these innocent people to dying. You would have wanted to try to find an alternative way, because that's the whole reason you're doing this in the first place, if we can recall, Jake. I remember back to the first book where you were like, we have to keep going because I have to make sure, I have to believe that my brother can still be saved. Newsflash, pal. Okay, if the Kandrona was destroyed and you knew the whole time that there was a chance that they would have to kill your brother, you probably wouldn't have destroyed it. So, like, sorry, but you don't have to roast my boy Axe just because you're feeling a little sensy poo about his little observation of fact. Ridiculous.
Gianni,
Mr.
he's the leader. He's the leader.
Mr. Leader over here needs to get knocked down a peg, okay?
Which they also mention that again somewhere near the middle end of this book. And I was like, oh my god, Gianni. I get it, it's for people, like, maybe they skipped a few books and they're just tuning in or whatever, but, like...
It's the only time that I had an issue with Jake in this book, so just to be clear...
The rest of the time, like, he was good. Yeah.
He was fine. Yeah, he was totally fine the rest of the book. But, yeah, I was really miffed about this, because I was like, that is just ridiculous. Because also, it's, like, antithetical to your cause, because if the whole cause is like, we really want Axe to trust us more or whatever, and then he's like, yeah, you're a fucking alien and you don't know anything about humans, after making very accurate observation, I'm like, dude, fuck you, man. You're an asshole.
You don't know me, you don't know my life, you're not even human.
Dude, absolute jerk. Because, like, it's like, you know, he was right. Like, there wasn't even, like, I don't get it. Anyway, Axe is all moody and upset. He's running through the woods. He ends up running over to Cassie's house. There's this, like...
Oh, no. First he goes to Marco's house. The whole thing with the... Is that... Wait, is it...
When he
Cassie
poses
first?
Jake? Yeah, the dinner with where he poses Jake, right?
Oh, you know what?
It's the next day that he meets up with Marco.
No. It's because he hangs out with Marco and then he goes out and he's kind of wandering alone, running around. And then
so I got it backwards.
Cassie told him, yeah, I think it's flipped around. So Axe goes, the next day, Axe goes to Marco's house. And it's kind of clear our Animorphs gang are trying to get some more answers out of Axe of like, hey, why aren't you telling us more things? Hey, here's some answers about us. Why don't you share some stuff about you? And so they have to stop by Marco's house really quickly. And Marco says to Axe, if my dad asks you anything, just say yes or no. And that's it. Just answer yes or no and don't give him anything else. And he's like, okay, Marco. And so he goes to Marco's dad's house. Marco goes upstairs. Axe looks at Marco's dad's computer. He's like a software engineer for like space.
Yeah, for some sort of like nondescript, like implied to be like
spacey
NASA
thing
programmer
up in the sky. And so Axe is like, oh, this is a child's game. Let me rewrite this entire thing and correct all the mistakes. Haha, what fun. Look how good I'm doing. And then when he's finished with it, he goes, I win. Just to himself. Which, I was like, boss ass move, Axe. That's exactly me when I play video games and I beat a boss. I win. And then Marco's dad comes in, asks him a bunch of questions. Big funny scene. Yes, no, yes, no. And then Marco takes him out and he leaves. And Axe realizes after doing this code that there's a way he could contact his family by transmitting through Z-space, which even though humans haven't figured that out yet, he can figure it out by rewriting that software in a way where he can use it. Complicated software thing. I don't know about it. Yeah. I'm a big old dumb.
This is just one of those like science fiction things. Yeah. Where it's like, yeah. If I put my harmonizer in your quantum resonance chamber or whatever, like, it's like this kind
harmonizer in the quantum resonance chamber. I like that.
Yeah, just gobbledygook kind of stuff.
Yeah, but, exactly. So then he is out in the fields, running and just being a sad, lonely boy. And Cassie comes out. She's like, Axe, you're lonely. You should come home and have dinner with me and my parents. And he's like, well, I can't do that. I'm an Andalite. She's like, be Jake. I don't care. Like, just come over, have dinner. We're having chili. And he's like, okay.
I would just like to say, this stupidest fucking idea ever, because
they know food. They know.
You've seen what happens. Like, I don't know why you guys are like continuing to invite him to social engagements that involve food.
I know.
It's just silly stuff.
I wanted to mention, totally forgot about this. So that first book when Axe tastes like the Starbucks, what was that? That was the Predator, right? I realized that was an updated version of the book because originally he had tasted Cinnabon. I don't know why they changed that. That's why throughout this book there's a bunch of mentionings about cinnamon buns and how much he loves them.
Yeah.
It's because
they do it at the end too.
Yeah,
that's funny. I was wondering where the cinnabon thing came from.
That's what it was originally in the Predator. And so I was reading this and I was like, oh, I thought the Cinnabon thing was later. But no, it was that first time they just updated it to Starbucks. Because if you think about it, where was Starbucks in 1997? I don't think it really got popular until early 2000s.
Yeah, I couldn't really tell you. I mean, I was a 90s kid, but I definitely didn't have coffee back then.
No, I didn't either. I still don't.
Totally familiar with it.
But yeah, so I realized that was one of the updates. And so that's why there's mention of it. So his favorite thing on Earth is cinnamon buns. That's why he keeps mentioning it. So anyway, Axe goes to the dinner. He discovers chili. And Cassie's like, actually, just kidding. I don't want you to come to dinner. It's fine. Jake's had enough to eat. And his parents are like, nah, come on over for chili. She's like, Axe, I don't think you're hungry. And he's like, oh, I am hungry. I would like this chili. And they're like, all right. So he tastes it. It's
like, you did this to yourself. You did this to yourself.
I know. It's very spicy. Axe loses his shit. And he's like, I want more. And then Cassie's like, you can have mine, I guess, The parents are like, you like it? And he's like, I love it. So.
Yeah, they're talking to him about the bowls.
Oh, yeah. He's like, yes, I think they will go far.
Yes.
And then he's like, do you know they invented the cream making machine in 1852? And they're like, okay. So
yeah, it's just a weird, goofy little scene that like really has no bearing on the plot at large.
No, not really. Just a little goof.
Just funny moments with Axe.
So then he leaves Cassie's house. He realizes he had a nice time, and then he's like, "Why? I am human, but it's so weird feeling all these emotions." And Cassie's like, "Yes, they're emotions. We feel them. Get used to it. You need to be in touch with your emotions." He's like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, I miss my family. Then he has a whole conversation with Tobias. And he's like, you know what, Tobias, I'm going to tell you a secret. And you have to keep it from everybody else. I have a plan. I need your help. And Tobias is like, okay, I'll do it. I'll keep it a secret from everybody else. And
right. And he doesn't really give him a lot of details. But he basically is just like, we're going to go to
this observatory.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, like some sort of satellite center. We're gonna break in. We're gonna, and then you just have to sort of keep watch for me, basically. Yeah,
keep an eye out that no one's there. So they go to the observatory the next day. Axe goes into the building. It looks abandoned? ? They're like, it's suspiciously abandoned. And I'm like, there's probably controllers there then. So Axe gets into the building. He demorphs into his Andalite self. He finds one of the computers. I guess it's the same place that Marco's dad works, right? Where the software was uploaded.
Presumably,
yeah. So he puts the virus into the software, and before he executes the virus to completely destroy the software that would put the human race 100 years ahead of where we're supposed to be technology-wise, he makes a call to home. He gets into Z space and he connects with there
was a lot of names coming at me at this part, so I really do not know all the names. But he connects with some Andalite person, some sort of high-ranking
warriors. Yeah, one of them is the warriors that his brother was with before he fell to Earth. And the warriors are like, "Oh, did you follow your revenge? Like, have you avenged Elfangor's death?" And he's like, "No." And they're like, "Okay, well, I guess the human race is doomed, so you can come back now." And he's like, "Wait, no, like they can fight." And then he reveals to them that Elfangor gave them the morphing technology to, what is it, 5 humans? 6 humans? 6.
5. 5 humans, right?
I don't know how to count today. I have the flu. Anyway. So he says, that sounds suspicious, Aximili. You don't think it was your brother, the hero warrior that everyone sees him, breaking all of our laws, do you? Do you think maybe it could have been the not warrior, the trainee who doesn't know anything because he's young and dumb? What do you think that could be, Aximili? And Axe is like, okay, yeah, I did it. I gave them the technology. And they're like, oh, you're forgiven. Okay, come back. And he's like, I want to talk to my parents. So then he connects with his parents, lets them know Elfangor died. And then suddenly, controller, oh no, he finds Axe in the room and he holds a gun at him.
Yeah, so this one was a name with an E.
I should have written it down and I'm dumb because I didn't.
I want to say it's Eslin.
I think you're very close.
Something like that, and then followed by numbers. They're always followed by numbers. I couldn't tell you the numbers, but I remember that it was something with an E, and I'm pretty sure it was like an Eslin. But so he pops in, and actually this was very different than what I expected out of this conversation as well.
Yeah, big surprise.
So he basically says, like, due to like the sort of like weird complications with the Kandrona, like Visser 3 is making pretty much some hard cuts on the Yeerks. He's saving the ones that he likes, that are going to like be helpful for him, and he's leaving the ones to die that are kind of not really of consequence. And one of those was, I guess, this Yeerk's like partner, of
like
sorts.
Love interest, maybe.
Which was obviously like a total curveball, because I did not get the impression that these Yeerks had any sort of romantic connection to each other at all.
I did. I did.
That was like complete out of left field for me.
Yeah.
But he was like, I want Visser 3 to pay. We both want the same thing. I'll tell you where one of his
where
like
he
shuttles
feeds.
is.
Yeah.
And that'll be that, right? And so he writes it down on a note,
hands it
which
over to
sounds like an
Axe.
inconsequential detail, but is important later.
I know.
And hands it over to Axe. Axe decides not to tell anybody.
Yep.
So he leaves, and then everybody has like a meeting shortly thereafter. They're basically trying to get Axe to really tell them, like, okay, we know you have some information. Like, we just want to know, like, what's the deal? What's going on?
Yeah, it's like a big intervention.
And once again, Axe is like not very forthcoming with a lot of the details. He's being very vague.
But he's also really sad about it too. Like this time, instead of just,
because he wants to be honest with them.
Yeah, so he's in this push-pull relationship with his now new friends of like, I'm okay, you can trust me. And they're like, we don't know if we can trust you because we're sharing all of this about our lives. We're trusting you with our lives, and you're not giving us anything back, which I think is valid. But, they get really upset, and then Axe gets really upset, and he's like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And he turns around and he kind of slinks out of the barn, like off to wherever the Visser feeds the next day.
There is a change that I would make to this whole thing, though, which is that, and I don't know how much anybody recalls of all of this, but Jake and Marco are sitting on a pretty fucking big secret themselves, okay? And if they want to get all high and mighty with Axe, they maybe should have a little bit more self-reflection, don't you think?
I think so.
Those uppity sons of bitches are getting a little... maybe I should have saved this for like the adaptation talk or whatever, but I would have had like, specific shots type like put into the script of the episode or whatever, but you need to show that like Marco is like being obviously quiet at this like intervention or something like that. I think that speaks volumes for the whole thing. But like Marco cannot be as vocal as he is in this book about the situation, knowing full well that he is just as guilty as like whatever Axe is doing. And Jake can because Jake sucks, but like Marco can't because Marco we like. So that's all I'll say about that. So then the next day, Axe basically starts the day. He's like, this is the day I'm going to die.
He does his ritual.
Tobias comes and is like, can you just tell me what you're doing? And he's like, I'm going to go assassinate the Visser. And he's like, kind of explains that, a little bit about like the Prince hierarchy stuff. We all, succumb to somebody else. And so he's like, so if Prince Jake like ordered you to tell him, like you would have to tell him. And he's like, yeah, we all have to be deferential to somebody.
You have
at
to
the
follow
end of the day.
orders.
And this is his directive. He has to avenge his brother's death. And ask Tobias to like please not say anything. Tobias says that he'll let him go. And then Axe goes to this field where the Visser's supposed to show up. He turns into the rattlesnake because he knows he could be faster than an Andalite. And successfully enough, he does actually get to put venom into Visser 3.
Twice. Pumps it right into him.
That he's trying to make a quick getaway. He's not morphing fast enough. A Hork-Bajir is literally about to cut his fucking head off. And the Animorphs come in and they save him. There's a whole thought speech conversation with Tobias and Axe where he's like, I thought you wouldn't tell them. And he's like, well, I mean, Jake is my prince too or whatever. So he asked me to tell him and I had to follow my directives.
He's being a leader.
They have their little buddy cop banter or whatever. They basically scare off the other Hork-Bajir and whatnot.
They're like, you're outnumbered. Get out of here unless you want to die. We're about to kill the Visser.
And then this is what we were talking about before. This is where it gets absolutely Looney Tunes. So Visser 3 actually flees the body because the body is kind of failing from this venom. Visser 3 actually flees the body, dives into like the river. Like a river.
Yeah, because there's a river where he was going up to feed, and
Tobias
so
is like, I lost him, which I would still be looking for him, by the way. But I get it. I mean,
he was like flying around panicking, like he went in the water. I can't see through the water. I can't find him. I'm looking, and they couldn't find him.
We have a billion other like water morphs we could try to use at this point, but whatever. Anyway,
he could also get eaten by something in the ocean.
There's a billion things that could happen, but so he, for all intents and purposes, he escapes because he has to escape. Great, fine. But the Andalite that he took over is very much still alive and conscious, and
he says, "My name is Alaran."
He's begging to die. He's like, please kill me so that he doesn't take me over again. And Axe goes to do it and then doesn't. And then Alaran can't do it to himself either because the venom is making him too weak to actually do it to himself.
Yeah.
So all he says then is he's like, well, okay, just pass a message to my family.
Yeah. Tell my family I love them.
Yeah.
And Axe is like, okay.
And Axe leaves knowing full well
all of them leave.
Knowing
All of them just leave. What are you doing?
that the next time that they see him, he's gonna be the Visser again.
He's begging.
At the very least, guys, let's take the Andalite. At the very least, let's take the Andalite. Like, what the fuck are we thinking? This is insane. That's the least we could do. The most we could do is just kill him, like he asked.
Jake, where was your
because he's
leader
gonna die
skills?
anyway.
You could have ordered Axe to kill
Awful.
him.
No one has a single other idea here. Not
No.
even like broaching it at all.
It's like,
And so like this whole thing, it reminds me of, okay, so there was this this masterclass that I did with Dan Brown.
Okay.
Dan Brown, the writer of the Da Vinci Code, right? It's like one of the most successful writers of all time, right? And I don't know what anybody thinks of like Dan Brown books. I like them, but it's not necessarily like those types of thrillers, those like page turning thrillers. It's not necessarily like what I seek out, right? But I appreciate, I admire the artistry, right? He had actually a really interesting perspective where he was talking about like one of his earlier books. Actually, I think he was talking about Angels and Demons.
I loved
he was
Angels
talking
and Demons.
Me too. It's my favorite of his. But so
Same.
he was talking about how he got to a certain point in one of his books, and it was like, here's the villain's whole plan. It's basically going to cause like just these massive like implications, blah blah blah, whatever. And originally he was writing like the sort of like final moments of it, and he was like, it's just not interesting. Like, it's just not wrapping up interestingly because they like stop the villain and they like save the day, right? And he was like, this is just not interesting. And so he was like, I felt like I had promised my audience this thing where like they've been one step ahead the whole time. They're still one step ahead at the end, and through mere contrivance, like they lose. And he's like, what if they win? Like, what if they just did the thing, and then I had to deal with it as a writer? And that's where like the whole like third act, so to speak, of like the book came from.
Yeah.
And made it one of the most successful books of all time. And so his whole point was, he was like, sometimes there's a certain level of like of communication that a writer has to have with a reader, in that you have to kind of lean into the hard thing.
Yeah.
Even if it makes your job as a writer more difficult, you have to, if you're at that crossroads, you have to be willing to jump over that line. Otherwise, they're going to sense a contrivance, and they're going to be disinterested, or they're going to be deflated by sort of like the anticlimax of it all. And it so much reminded me of this moment where I was like, here we have it, like the perfect opportunity for like something majorly consequential to like completely shake up this series. And instead, we're frustrated because this is an anticlimax, and this like totally like drops the ball and doesn't appreciate the characters, doesn't appreciate the relationship that we, the reader, have with the characters, and just totally feels like a miss. Yes. And listen, you can have like, if you want to have this type of thing, you can have like a Deus Ex, like whatever, like like Hork Bajir battleship is coming in. Oh my God, we have to make a decision. We have to make a quick getaway. Whatever it is, like there's ways that we could kind of like force it into this anticlimax that just feel a little bit more genuine. But this was probably the most egregious way that they could have handled it, unfortunately, because it just feels like, okay, I guess this was all for absolutely nothing. Like, it was just kind of inconsequential at the end of the day.
This
and
is
all
the
for
whole
what?
goal of the book, is to get revenge for his brother. And then he didn't do it. It wasn't that he couldn't do it. It's just that he chose not to. When this fellow Andalite is begging him for death, it felt like such it's like going on a roller coaster. You're going up, 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 and you're about to hit that drop, and then suddenly the drop is just like flat, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, I guess this is the rest of the roller coaster is just flat lines,
flat and made of cardboard, because it
it
also doesn't even feel like the same roller coaster that you were on before,
Yeah.
But yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's just one of those things, and so I think that there's an infinite possibility of more interesting ways that this could have been handled.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I just think that this was the least interesting one. Again, like we were already saying, the book as in and of itself, I would still say is better than a lot of the other books in the Animorph series. I would still go as far as to say I don't think we've read a bad book, whatever makes a bad book for you. I don't think we've read a bad book yet in the Animorph series. From everything I hear about the series moving forward, we eventually will, but we have not hit that point yet as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
but everything has the the possibility of like good and bad work within it. And I just unfortunately this is just one example in an altogether very compelling read that just completely misses the mark.
It's one of those where I get it that you need some plot armor around Visser 3. He needs to get away somehow. I mean, the way that I probably would have changed it, just at least to have it make some kind of sense, is that Axe tells his friends, "Thank you for your help. I have to do this alone. I have to kill the Visser by myself." And they say, "All right, Axeman, we'll wait for you back at the barn." They all go to the barn. He approaches the dying Andalite, and Alaran says, "Please kill me. You have to kill me." And Axe puts his tail blade up to his throat, and then he realizes, I can't do it. Like, he just feels in his soul, like, I can't bring myself to kill a warrior that I so appreciate the Andalite warriors part of society. You know, like, I look up to all of you so much. I can't bring myself to do it, because he is also a child at the end of the day. It's like giving a child a gun to kill an adult. You know, he's in that mentality. And so, you know, if he wouldn't have been able to do it and says, "I'm sorry, I'm trying, is there anything else I can do for you?" And Alaran's just like, leave. And next time, don't hesitate. And then Axe could run off. It still plays into this theme of the book of Axe feeling like he's coming up short, like he is not a warrior yet. He can't do the right thing yet. I feel like that would make so much more sense for his character. It would bring back this, it would remind readers that he is still a child at the end of the day. He's not a warrior. He's not some great hero. He's just Axe. And
I'd be fine with it so long as the rest of the group is mad at him for
yes. Yeah, I think that would be fair also.
If you have that conversation, then I think it's fair. But it's like, yeah, because the problem with the way it's handled here in the book is just that it deprives everybody else of any sort of agency as a character.
Yeah.
No one has any opinion about this thing. No one has anything to say.
They all just turn and leave.
Do you want to hear my swing for the fences that changed?
Yes, I would love to hear your ending. Yes.
Axe does it, and this thing dies.
Yeah.
And then, at a certain point, at some other point in the series, again, I don't know what happens. This is my, again, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because for whatever reason. But Alaran dies. I think that Visser 3 comes back as Axe's brother, and we reveal that when he ate him as that whatever that monster was, he actually regurgitated him, brought him back to health, so that he would have a backup Andalite body to inhabit.
Gianni, that's messed up. That's so cool, though.
That's what I would fucking do.
Oh! So in order to kill Visser 3, he has to kill the person he was avenging. Oh!
Yes. That's how I would do it.
Genius.
I think then it's from a writing standpoint, you're writing right into the problem, and you're like, okay, and we've solved this big thing. Now Visser 3 is without an Andalite body. Everything that made him powerful is now gone, and all of a sudden there's something that's morphing, that's attacking us.
Oh.
What is it? And then Visser 3 reveals himself again, and he's in the body of basically the person that gave them all of their stuff.
And that could be the prologue of this episode of, like, the kids see him eating, like, dropping Elfangor in his mouth. They all run off, and then the scene continues focused on Visser 3 as he spits out Elfangor and says, "I have better plans for you."
Yep.
And leaves him, like, with broken legs on the ground or whatever, you know, like a way to entrap them or somehow. Yeah. Oh.
Now, obviously, this has to go in tandem with Visser 3 learning that they are humans. Because as we know how your brains work or whatever, how Yerk's inside your brain work, he would have the memories, so he would have the awareness,
the knowledge.
So again, you have to take what I say with a grain of salt, because I don't know how that's discovered in the series yet. That's still like a Chekhov's gun situation, so maybe there's better plans for it. But sitting here right now, I am 100% certain that that's a better ending for this book, for what this book would be in a television series, than what's done here.
Oh, that'd be such like a better idea. I love that idea. Yeah, but it does write you in that hole of like, now the Visser knows they're human. They know what they look like. He knows they're like essentially where they are.
Right.
And he knows what to look out for. So that would write you in another hole of like, okay, well, how do we fix this? But I love that idea that now Axe has to avenge his brother by killing his brother. And then like, if he does accomplish that, he's like, oh, Axe, you were a true hero to the end. And then Elphegor dies. And he's like, I was a hero. My brother the hero said I was a hero. Oh, I love you, brother. Goodbye. Slice. Anyway.
So it's it's a lofty swing. Again, it's going to be dependent on a lot of different things. But as of right now, that's the change I would make.
That's a great ending.
I think it'd be a mic drop moment.
That kill so hard. Well, what could have been. So I don't know how they're going to find the Visser's Yerk somewhere in the ocean.
Yeah, they're cooked on that. But so I guess this book, for then all intents and purposes, wraps up with everybody has like a brief little meeting. They all are chitter-chattering about what Axe knows. He confesses about the law of Ciro's kindness. Which
I thought was a pretty cool reveal.
Very interesting. Yeah, so this is like the overarching mystery of the whole thing. But basically, Ciro's kindness, the whole thing is, the law is that no Andalite can reveal their technology to other alien species. And the reason it was named this is because there was an Andalite named Ciro who went to the Yerk homeworld, felt bad for them, gave them the Andalite technology so that they could go off-world.
Which,
and basically,
at the time, the Yerks only had control of the Geds. They weren't able to travel anywhere, and Ciro felt bad that the Yerks were kind of blind and dumb, and he wanted to give them a chance at having a full life. And because he gave them the technology to travel around space, now they are a parasite infesting multiple different species, and it brought them to ruin, and now they're arrogant little pricks that need to be destroyed. Which I also noticed in this book, Andalites and Yerks are kind of two sides of the same coin. They're both arrogant in their own ways. They both believe that they're superior as far as their race. And I thought that was really interesting to kind of see both sides of it, where I was like reading some of the interactions with the Andalites and being like, you guys are kind of smug a little bit. So it was cool to see those mirrored experiences and similarities.
Also worth noting, because there was another like mention, or I guess confirmation of something that like I think maybe we assumed, but I don't think was ever directly stated before this point. But like the Andalites, they're not born with the ability to morph or the ability to pass that on. It is a discovery that they made. So obviously the implication, right, is definitely that like, oh, maybe we could get like an army of other morphs. Like maybe we could, theoretically be able to find some way. So now if that does happen, I'm guessing that that's probably saved for like books 35 through 45 or something like that. But it is at least an option that's on the table, which I did think was like, oh, I clocked that. Like that's interesting.
And when I read that, I was like, oh, well, they always call it morphing technology. I was like, I felt kind of dumb, like, oh, did I just miss this and not realize like they weren't born with the ability to morph? They have to acquire it from the technology. But no, they never specifically say that until this book, which I was like, oh, okay, cool. Very interesting. So you can kind of pass the technology around. So we'll see where that goes.
Kind of interesting. But so then Axe goes back to that little like observatory place. He goes back to the controller person. And
that guy's pissed.
the guy's like, you fucking botched it, and he's
Yeah,
like,
you
shut
idiot.
up. And then he sends one last message back, and it's to deliver Alarin's message of like, you know, just that he loves his family or whatever. And then he tells his superiors, he's like, hey, I'm gonna tell my friends everything because this is my home now, essentially. And he's gonna try to save it, and that's how this sort of caps off.
And you can't tell me what to do anymore.
Yeah, suckers. Which I do think there's a happy medium. Maybe we could ask for
A little
maybe we
bit.
could
I
get
don't
some
think he should be
backup or
this
something.
smug for
Yeah.
not killing the Visser when he had the
I mean,
opportunity.
I mean, I don't know, but I would say that, you know, pump the brakes, kid. But all in all, I appreciate it. So
He's like that goat
the
meme.
alien.
Do you remember that old goat meme with that little baby goat that's like, he's got a
Yeah.
little smug face? That's
yeah.
Axe.
That's Axe in this last scene
Yeah,
for sure.
that's definitely him. All right. So we've shared our thoughts and feelings. We've shared. Are there any other changes that you would make to this as far as turning it into an episode?
No major changes. I mean, like, there's some of the like comedic moments that I think we'd have to like. I still think I'd write them into the episode, shoot them, and then maybe in the edit, those things might be more prudent to like cut those things out. Again, I would have already had this prologue somewhere else, so I don't think you need the prologue in this. But yeah, all in all, I think I'd stick pretty true to this source material. It's really the ending that I would have some pretty drastic changes.
Yeah.
And I do think these things are very interesting. Like, listen, I'm all for like adhering to
The source material.
source material. But I do think that there are, you know, changes in an adaptation that do become necessary, and not all of them are specifically just to like make a source material better or anything like that. Like,
Right.
that's not what I'm saying. But like sometimes things do become relevant. Like, I mean, having spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Lord of the Rings at this point, but having Boromir die at the end of Fellowship, I do think is a better change to the source material than like the beginning of Two Towers, like having Aragorn like come upon him. Just solely for structural purposes of like how that movie flows and functions, right? Like, I think that people confuse changes for being like disparaging to source material at all
not
times, and it's not
necessarily.
always the case. In this instance, this is a lofty change, obviously, that like, and who's to say like we get down the line and then I take it all back because whatever way they reveal these certain things is just superior or whatever it is. But I do know that like the way this is handled now has to change. It's just a matter of like how drastic can it be, right? And all in all, what I like the most about like drastic changes like that is there's no better feeling for me as a fan of like all mediums than when I'm like watching something that's adapted and it's very faithful to the source material, and then they throw a curveball in where I'm like, oh, I have no idea. Like,
And it
wait,
works.
this could go somewhere else now. Like, this is uncharted territory. That's just a feeling that's so rarely ever felt in a lot of this stuff.
And that stuff comes when you stay true to the characters, when you're familiar with the characters, when you know their goals, their motivations, what their traits are. If you stay true to the characters and you love them and you care about them, you will find a way that benefits both the story and the fans of the story. As long as it feels true and doesn't feel like it comes out of left field, like, I'm gonna bring it back to Game of Thrones. Once again, Jaime Lannister is saying, screw this, I'm gonna go back to my sister. Bye! It's like, you just destroyed seasons of growth with this character that we hated and then we grew to love and then we were rooting for. And then you just threw it all away! Why? I just... when you...
For pure contrivance of whatever they felt
they gotta finish the
had
page.
to have.
They gotta finish the page by the end of the day, you know? So
Yep.
when you truly do care about these characters, and you will be able to find a way to write something that satisfies everything because it feels true to the source material, and the fans don't feel like they're being lied to, so or they're not being conned in any way. Because once you lose the trust of the fans, you kind of lose the momentum of the show.
All I know is that fans of the Animorphs, if they saw, like, let's say they had a really faithful, like, very, like, mostly faithful, because I feel like every change that we've offered to make has been relatively faithful in line with the source material thus far, right?
I think so.
How exciting is it as a fan of the Animorphs to get to an episode like this, and you're like, oh yeah, this is what, and it gets to this moment, and Axe cuts Alarin's throat. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there watching the show as a fan of the Animorphs, and you go, what the fuck? Like, what's going to happen now?
What happened?
Like, Visser 3 is and so much more. Like, what's going to happen? That, that's worth everything. Like, that's so cool. That's so cool. And if you could pull that off and you can do something with it and make it interesting, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's a change I'd love to see.
So, yeah, those are our thoughts on the book. It looks like now we're on book 9.
All right, can I look at the cover now?
Yes, please look at the
favorite.
secret.
This has become my favorite part of every episode that we do.
I love it too. I'm actually having a lot of fun with looking forward and trying to remember like what this is. What's the matter?
This is the second picture, the second image in this one.
It looks like the movie Cats.
Is what
now,
is
look,
that?
I also want to let people know we're not clowning on the artists for like making these horrific creations. Absolutely not. This was the technology. They're making it look cool. I thought it looked cool as a kid, but like as an adult, you can see that it's freaky deaky.
It's always like the what, like somewhere in between.
The second or the third,
like the 2 or the 3.
So describe what you're looking at, Gianni. Yeah.
Yeah. So it looks like Rachel, Cassie.
I was like, boy.
Turning into a wolf.
Yes.
Of sorts.
That is a wolf.
And your depiction of it being just like the Cats movie is actually pretty spot on for that second image, but somehow more cursed. Like the neck is like already super thick and stuff.
Yeah, and one shoulder is way higher than the other.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
What's funny about this one is that like the fourth image looks like the morph is complete, but then the 5th one they didn't know what to do, so they just made it bigger and a little bit different colored. Which I find so funny. Not the worst cover we've ever seen, but that second image will haunt my nightmares forever. So this book is called The Secret, apparently.
The Secret. And what's the tagline on there?
No place to run, no place to hide.
Because it's a secret!
Oh my god.
I would like someone, if you're good at Photoshop, please take all the images that Gianni says are absolutely cursed and burned into his brain. Make a super Animorphs cut of that by the end of this series and send it to us. Because I would love to just see all of his nightmares come true.
Just the ones. Yeah.
Just the one face. Yeah, just the
like
one.
The third or the second.
The one that is the scariest. So what do you think The Secret's about? The second Cassie book.
Yeah, I don't know about, because I felt like the last one almost should have been titled The Secret instead of The Alien, but
I could see that.
But I guess, I mean,
but he had multiple secrets, so you can't just do one secret.
That's kind of. Here's the thing: if this was a Marco book, I think we would all be like, "Oh, this is the one where he's gonna finally like tell the group or whatever about his mom." But this being a Cassie book really throws me off for like what the secret could be. So,
what secrets could Cassie possibly have?
I don't know.
The one who's the most gaslit of the group.
Yeah. Maybe the secret is her dating Jake, like official. Maybe they're.
Well, she did mention something like that to Axe at the end of this book, or at the end of the book, or in the middle of the book. Axe was "Don't you two have like feelings for each other?" And she's like, "What? No."
I mean,
and he's like, "What about you guys holding hands?"
Could be.
She's like, "Oh,
that could be it." I mean, I don't know. That could really be an option. So, yeah, I don't know what the plot of this one could be. To be honest with you, I would.
It's so vague.
I would imagine
could be anything.
Yeah, yeah. No place to run, no place to hide is kind of odd. Maybe they figure out like where Cassie lives or something. That could be kind of interesting. But even still, I don't know where they would get the title from. Well, I don't know why I'm trying so hard on this title. It's not like...
You're trying so hard.
we've had a run of a couple in a row that have been actually title specific to the plot. Maybe this is when they go back to their roots here and they remember, oh, that's right, we actually can just make up titles that mean nothing to these books. So maybe this is that.
Could be. I think,
I don't know.
From what I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, I could be wrong. If I'm remembering correctly, I think this is one of those books where you see the morph on the front cover and it's barely used in the book, which annoys me. Like, I get it, they want to put the coolest animal on the cover, but like, I want to see different animals. I don't need to see wolves and bears all the time. Give me a spider monkey, or like a stingray.
Give me a slug.
Give us a little slug. Well, okay, I can't. I can't. I'm not going to say any more about that. It could be a slug.
There's a slug.
And then the whole book is just them trying to escape from someone putting salt on the sidewalks. Yeah. That's what the Yerks try to fight them with, is salt on the sidewalks.
Yeah, curse you, Yerks. That's good.
They raise a slug.
We're in uncharted territory here. The tagline I'm hoping is something consequential to the plot. So I'm hoping it's like ooh, maybe they have a read on somehow, like, you know, maybe it's like Cassie has to flee from home type of story or something like that. That could be kind of interesting. So yeah. I'm excited.
Cool. So if you enjoyed this, if you liked our different ending ideas, or if you have a better one that you'd like to pose to us, please don't spoil anything in the future. We don't want to be spoiled. So you can email us at morphinbuddies@gmail.com, morphinbuddies at
gmail.com.
You son of a bitch. You ruined it.
It's your thing. It's your thing to spell out the Gmail.
But I thought we'd, surprise the audience. Plot twist.
I've not. I already had one major change from source material. I can't do another.
Booze in the chat for Gianni. Boo! You can email us at morphinbuddies@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts and opinions, if you hate what we're saying, if you love what we're saying, if you have any differing ideas, please let us know. We'd love to interact.
We're pretty receptive to negative criticism as well. So if you really just want,
we hate positive criticism.
We hate that.
Don't tell us we look pretty today.
We go boo.
Boo. Pretty. Ew.
Boo.
Stinky.
But if you have anything to say at all, you can let us know.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Morphin Buddies.